What's up YouTube? It's Mr. Ferguson here once again. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. We're going to be discussing the class that I took down in Wilmington through NC State Extension, talking about turf grass. We're going to get into that in just a second. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm excited to tell you what I was able to learn and experience. Before we jump into that on the video, just want to continue to remind you, we're still trying to get to 6,500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. We've got so many cool prizes to give away. Here they are on your screen right now. We've got 2 backpack sprayers and we have 3 bags of fert. We're giving it away free of cost, no strings attached other than just being subscribed, staying tuned to the channel. And when we tell you which video to comment on, we'll likely pull from the comments of the video because a lot of people are subscribed, many people are not active on the channel. So we want to make sure we're picking people that are active, and that will even whittle it down a little easier for you to be able to win if you're being active on the channel, liking the video, sharing it. So the sooner we get to 6,500, the sooner I'm able to give these away, and I'm excited to give it out to 5 lucky winners. I love giving things away. It brings joy to my heart. I want to be able to help you guys in your lawn and your lawn experience. So make sure you're spreading the word. Get your kids, get your wife, all the YouTube counts that you know. Make sure they're subscribed to Mr. Ferguson. They're being active. They're liking the videos. They're commenting. And you can have a chance to win one of these awesome prizes. So many of you know from one of my previous videos, I mentioned that I signed up for one of the NC State regional conferences they have. I'm guessing every single year, based on what I learned, they do this every year. So if you wasn't able to make it this year, you are, if you're North Carolinian or out of state and you're interested, you are able to attend these just as a citizen of the state or just someone that's interested in turf grass. That's what I did. So I attended the one in Wilmington based off cost. They have like a 3 to 4 day program in Raleigh, which is about 25, 30, 35 minutes from my house. However, it was in the hundreds of dollars. And if there was any type of severe weather or it got canceled, you just lost your money. I wasn't willing to put up that much money by chance in case it got canceled or something like that. So I skipped that. But later on, they put out different emails of, hey, we're doing regional conferences in different locations. And it was a much cheaper cost. The class that I attended in Wilmington or New Hanover regional conference was $30. So they had a morning session and an afternoon session, and I signed up for both after looking at the schedule. Well, it turns out, I guess I saw something incorrectly. The afternoon schedule was the same as the morning schedule, so it was a repeat class in one day. It was from basically 8 a.m. until 11:45. They had multiple different speakers. When I showed up, I think I was probably the only person there not represented by a company. Many guys came in 2s, 3s, and 4s. They were part of their work. It was about a class of, it was a classroom setting, projector. Teacher got up front and had a big, slideshow presentation, which was awesome. And it was probably about 50 to 60 people in the room. It was jam-packed. There was a lot of seats, and I got there, about 15 minutes till, and I thought, okay, I didn't know if it was going to be about 10, 15 people. It was about 50 to 60 people, so it was tons of people. And so right away, I realized this is more for lawn care professionals or people, applicators that are in the business, not as much for citizens. I guess they don't get a lot of people like me from YouTube or something just wanting to learn about grass. Maybe that seems kind of crazy. These guys were actually, they clocked in with their job, and the job sent them there to learn or get a refresher. At one point, they did pass around a clipboard when we talked about pesticides and things of that nature that they signed. I guess it was like a refresher course, and they got the course requirements for that. So anyways, getting into, okay, so what did they talk about, Mr. Ferguson? Well, they did give us this, and it is a booklet. You can see 2024 Pest Control, but it's not just a book of pesticides. In here, it's got turf grass disease control, and just as an example, I turned of Pythium blight, and it tells me right here, I don't know if I can get this on the screen, but Pythium blight, and it tells me all the different fungicide formulations and the amount of formulation and how long the interval is between applications is. So it's like a guide. I can look up any disease in here, like a large patch or anything, pink snow mold, large patch. This is chemical control of aquatic plants. Talks about aquatic plants, growth regulators, for turf grass. It's got these back here. The next one, we're going back into disease control, and then it touches on susceptibility of broadleaf weeds to post-emergence. And so it's just tolerance of turf grass to to post-emergent herbicides, chemical weed control, and so all of these insect control. And so it's just a little quick guide for somebody like me. This is awesome, because if I find, okay, if I can diagnose a disease in my lawn, I can go and look at what the options are. And then of course it may come down to cost, because I'm a citizen, I'm not with a company. How much would it cost me to get what I want to apply? But pretty cool. They gave this out, so I do have this. And so I kept also a little notebook of the things that I found interesting, thinking about you guys. Like, what could I report back to the channel about, hey, these are some of the things they talked about and I found interesting and wrote down. Now, let me say this I probably wouldn't go back to the Wilmington class again. I wouldn't do that regional conference again, because it was mainly 99% warm season grass, because that's what those guys are targeting in Wilmington. It's Bermuda, St. Augustine, zoysia grass. That's pretty much all they talked about. But he did mention tall fescue a little teeny bit. And so it wasn't tough, because I was like, oh, everything warm season. I'm like, crap, I should have went to something either in Raleigh or to the western side of the state when they're dealing more with cool season grass. So that's the first thing I learned in setting through this course. But the first thing, Dr. Miller and all these guys are writing on turf files at the turf files on NC State's website. So it was cool to see their face and listen to them speak. The first one was Dr. Miller, and I didn't write all the names of the speakers, but I did write Dr. Miller. He did a quick class on organic lawns. Basically, what I've got here, he gave, I can put some of the links of the websites they gave me in the description. If you're in North Carolina and you're interested, they have a site similar to the soil temperature map. NC State has actual probes in the ground. But he did mention Greencast, the one that Alan Hain and everybody's talked about. He said both of them are reliable. He said they're very accurate, but we actually have physical probes in the ground to tell you soil temperature. So I'll leave some of those links below to NC State. But he talked about IPM, integrated pest management, and he talked about how everything seems to be moving to natural lawns. That's where our culture is headed, towards natural organic lawns. And one of the things he says is organics can still cause turf burn. He showed a picture about people using only organic like fertilizer, and showed on a golf course where you can still burn your lawn and mess it up. Just because it's organic doesn't mean that you can't burn your lawn or screw it up. We've heard that with Milorganite. You can throw down Milorganite by the truckload, you won't hurt your lawn, but you can with certain organic products. He talked about iron, some of the organic things using iron for weed control. I thought that was interesting, and I wrote that down, that chelated iron smokes clover. He went to overseas to Europe, I think he said, I can't remember where, but on a golf course they had a clover problem, and these guys were having straight iron, and they were using iron for weed control. I never really heard of that. It had black spots, but it was, you know, it was able to take out the clover, but there was consequences of it, basically. One of the things, I don't know, yeah, here it is. He says you can use organic, but you need to expect lower quality expectations, which was awesome. I think that makes total sense. If you're going to go with an organic or natural lawn, basically what he's saying is it's not going to look as great as the synthetic or other products we use. You know, if you're not going to use fungicides, you're not going to have as nice a lawn. If you're not going to use synthetic fertilizers, and you're only going to go organic, and you're only going to go organic for weed management, your expectations of the perfect lawn need to be lowered. They shouldn't be up here. If that, and so that's coming straight from his mouth. He talked about corn gluten meal could be used as a pre-emergent. He said one of the good things is it's a pre-emergent. One of the bad things, it's 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen when you use this pre-emergent. So what's the problem with that? You're going to absolutely use 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen per thousand in using this natural solution. So it was just little things to say. You don't always have to go to prodiamine. There are other options, but there are consequences. In this case, there is other solutions for pre-emergence, but with this corn gluten meal, It's an organic substitute for prodiamine, but it has 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen that you can't take out, that is going to be evident, and so that's what you would have to be throwing down in, and maybe you don't want to be throwing down in with that organic solution, if that makes sense. And then he talked about vinegar. It's great for weed control, but also that it's very bad for acidic, or excuse me, aquatic life. He said it's very acidic. He said that there was I think a treatment plant that had like a pond, and they were so proud because they used vinegar as an organic, and they were like, aha, we didn't put pesticides in the ground, we use vinegar. But then they noticed they basically smoked and killed all the snakes, all the crickets, all the frogs, all the salamanders and lizards. They all were dead or didn't stay because it's so acidic, they destroyed them. So there's pros and cons to, I don't want to put chemicals in my lawn versus I want to go organic, but there is consequences to going organic sometimes as well. There has to be a balance there, was his point, and that's all I got there. Then we had another lady come up, and she talked about in specific mole crickets and something called ground pearls. Ground pearls are very scary. It's a warm season thing, but it is basically a organism that eats at warm season grass, and there's literally no solution to it. It is worse than poatrib, I believe. She was basically saying if you find them, you're going to find, if you have warm season grass, you need to be on the lookout for this. If you find little round cylinders, or little round, looks like a pearl in your ground, and you squish it and it's squishy and it explodes when you squish it, that could be a ground pearl. They expand into this little pink organism that eats at grass. There is literally no solution. There's no spray you can spray for it. You can't dig them out. You can't even replace your sod because they can go down up to 8 inches in the ground. So even replacing all of your sod to get rid of them, you would have to basically dig up 8 inches of your whole ground. That's scary. And they're like, we're trying to find a solution to this, but right now you've got just bad ground, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's pretty scary. So she talked about that. They talked about, then we did something, we had a guy that mainly talked about golf courses. 90% of, or excuse me, I wrote it down, 70% of samples NC State gets for problems or disease is from golf courses, putting greens, and only like 20% is from lawns and people like us. So they're mainly dealing with golf courses, which are, in North Carolina, warm season grass. He talked about that. He was given 2023 data. He did talk about specifically dollar spot, and said and wrote down a bunch of different fungicides that he says works great: Secure, Maxtima, Posterity, Chipco, and basically he said patience with fungicide sprays. When you're spraying fungicides, you have to wait and be patient. He showed a little graph of how it took, they did trials and tests, and when they sprayed certain fungicides, he's like, many homeowners or many people, they'll think, oh, it didn't do anything after 3 days. They'll come out, they'll spray something else, and then when the first thing activates and makes a change, they think it was the last thing they sprayed. So long story short, what I wrote down is patience with fungicide sprays. He said spray something, leave it alone. In some cases, that's the best deal, and he went over some graphs and charts about that. He talked about fert your way out of it. Didn't work. So all of you out there who say, well, if you got disease in your lawn, just throw fert on it and it will grow out, he said not so. Fungicide is needed. They had a graph. They've done trials of this where there was fungus and they just tried to use urea to grow it out, and it versus urea plus fungicide. And so the conclusion was, the next line I got here, propiconazole plus urea at 1 ounce did the best for dollar spot. Dollar spot is something we really deal with in tall fescue, and that's where he did talk about something related to me in tall fescue. Was the best combination according to NC State is propiconazole and urea, 2 things I'm very familiar with. So it wasn't too much over my head for the whole class. I was in there, it was just some of the chemicals I didn't know what they're talking about. But yes, so for dollar spot specifically, he talked about that, propiconazole and urea. So a little bit of fertilizer, but you need to have fungicide as well. Climate.ncstate.edu, I'll leave that below. He talked, I think that may be for the the probes in the ground. He said Propy and Azoxy, 2 products, give the best control. So 2 things we're very familiar on this channel. Makes me feel good that I've not been giving you false information to be confirmed by these guys at NC State. So he says always use 2 fungicides. Is always better than 1, because if 1 doesn't work, you're going to have, and that's what Alan Hain has preached, the different spectrum of fungicides, group 1 versus group 3 and all that. That's what he said. And Propy and Azoxy seem to be the 2 best in North Carolina to work against most diseases. So he just confirmed that for us. For large patch, it's good to water in Azoxy. So he talked about in warm season grass with large patch, you actually want to water that in. He said in these cases, large patch is developed in the soil. He's like, a lot of you guys, when you're applying it, if you're just spraying it over, and he said you don't have to worry about it washing away, that these fungicides cling to tissue. So you don't have to worry about it washing away. But when you're talking about large patch, he's like, if you guys aren't seeing results, more than likely you're spraying, you know, so many ounces per 1,000. You need to double that because it needs to get into the soil. And so he talked about that and how watering in, there's no harm in watering in fungicides. So that was very interesting. And then the last guy, I know this is a longer video, but I want to give you guys all the education I got. The last guy I enjoyed the most because he talked about weed management for NC turf grasses. This guy, I believe, is Mr. Fred. He is retiring at the summer, but he talked about more light through turf, the more weeds you'll have. And we've said that here on the channel because, again, these are the guys that write turf files. The more light that is able to penetrate between your turf canopy, the more weeds you're going to have in your lawn. Having a dense lawn is the best prevention for weeds. We've talked about that. We've said that. He confirmed it. He said crabgrass at 55-degree soil temperatures is always right. He wrote down that goosegrass pops up at 60 degrees, barnyard at 60 degrees, but he said you can bet your mama's money on crabgrass. When it hits 55 degrees on 3 consecutive days, he actually pulled up the article that we did here on the channel and said, if you read this, and I was sitting there smiling because like, yep, we did a video on that. He said when there's 3 or more consecutive days of 55 degrees or higher soil temps, crabgrass is going to pop up, and he showed pictures in Raleigh of it happening there where there was no pre-emergent. That's why we've applied our pre-emergent. And he said, I hope you've got your pre-emergent down. We've been preaching that here for a long time as well. So trying to move on through this, for those that are still with me, thank you so much for still watching the video. He said pre-emergent should be out by the end of November as temperatures in our state continue to trend warmer. He's like, by the end of November, you need to have, basically if you're in North Carolina, you need to have your pre-emergent down. So that's exactly what I've seen the past 3 years doing this lawn care stuff, is by the end of February, I know it's time to do it. Almost it matches up with our soil temperatures now. Temperatures are trending up in our soil for winter. So it's moving that back a little bit from March into February. Also, he said, be aware that rainfall affects pre-emergence. It only lasts days if soupy. So what he was talking about is if you do your pre-emergent app, and then you have tons of rainfall, that tons of rainfall and standing water in your lawn can, they did a test on this with prodiamine specifically, and he said prodiamine will last 6 days if it's constantly in a soupy, wet lawn that has tons of rainfall. When it's not tons of rainfall, it'll last up to 60 days in their test. So basically, long story short, when we're getting abnormal amounts of rain through the winter or through early spring, that this will affect your pre-emergent. He was telling these guys, you may need to go out and apply more pre-emergent to these lawns that you're taking care of. So for you and me, if we're getting tons of rain in wet months, and you're like, man, I put down pre-emergent and what happened? Now I'm seeing weeds in my lawn. The rain can evaporate that barrier. And so he said, be aware of that. He's like, I hate to say this, but you're going to have to put more out. So he did mention that. Patterns changing, rainy winters, we just said that. And then lastly, 2 quotes that he said was, number 1, Speed Zone is really good stuff. So he did say that absolutely, and I was like, I wrote that down. Speed Zone is really good stuff. We just did a video on that before this one, talking about the Speed Zone that we did on clover over here and other parts of the lawn. So per Mr. Fred over at NC State, he likes Speed Zone, he uses it, he recommended it, and all these guys knew what he was talking about, the 2,4-D product. So, and then lastly, the other thing that he said was Fusillade is great against Bermuda Bermuda. And I was like, hey, I know what Fungicide is. We've had some fun with Fungicide here on the channel. So Fungicide is great for Bermuda. Apparently there's a new product called Restoration that is big in warm season grass. I believe he was saying in St. Augustine there's a Fungicide combined with another product is called Restoration. He said they're going giddy with this because now they can spray this on St. Augustine to rid St. Augustine of Bermuda grass. He said this is a big deal, this is huge. If you've got St. Augustine, now you can spray and get that common Bermuda out of your lawn, because this product, it started with an M, makes Fungicide safe. It doesn't hurt that warm season turf like it did before, and it's called Restoration. Also, he mentioned another new zoysia grass called SOLA. He said these sod farmers are loving this for whatever reason. You're going to hear more about Sola, that's taken off. And so, but it was enjoyable, even though it was a whole lot about warm season grass and very little about tall fescue. The things that I just mentioned that I wrote down were the things that appealed to me. He confirmed some things, right? You hear them from other sources. To hear them directly from the turf managers at NC State gives me more confidence. Speed Zone is the great thing to use for weed control. Fungicide is great for Bermuda if you do it in the proper quantities, which I've struggled with. So, but that's good. Also talking about propiconazole and azoxystrobin are the best two to combine for disease control in your lawn, and he talks about staying on top of that. So all these things being confirmed, I was just listening and absorbing. But I do hope to get more to a Western conference where they talk more about bluegrass and tall fescue and less about warm season grass. So I would encourage you to do it if you're able to do it for 30 bucks. I think doing it one time would be great, just to sit and listen. The time went by pretty quick. It wasn't boring. I wasn't like, man, I need to get out of here. I was interested. I was able to take notes, and didn't meet a whole lot of people, but just wanted to give you guys what I learned. And it confirms, again, everything we're teaching and talking about on the channel, they've confirmed and they've talked about. But again, I'll leave some links below if you're interested. I know this is a longer video. If you made it all the way to end, give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments, I made it, Mr. Ferguson. And just let me know your questions, comments, or your thoughts about this. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week with another lawn care video. God bless you.